Welcome back to the High 95 Radio Hour. This is your host, Adam Taxon, on WWDB AM 860 in Philadelphia. And let me just say a quick thank you to our sponsor, Singer Financial, your source for hard money loans in the greater Philadelphia area, and Bob Guzzardi, who's off and on. I just want to put in a plug for the Liberty blog, which has a lot of worthwhile stuff, which you can find. I'm not supposed to say stuff. A lot of worthwhile reading material, thelibertyblog.org. And let me welcome our next guest, John Derbyshire, formerly of National Review. Now you can find his material at tackymag.org, tackymag.com, and also on johnderbyshire.com. His name's been in the news a lot lately, but not for a lot of his expertise on China, and I hope we can talk about that a little bit today, John.
Hello, Adam. Why are you not allowed to say stuff?
My mom says it's a colloquialism that just makes me sound unprofessional, and I agree with her, but I haven't been doing radio for that long, to tell the truth, and I appreciate big-name guests like you indulging me nevertheless. I sound like a fourth grader when I say stuff, I think, or maybe like a fifth or sixth these days.
Now you've got me worried that maybe I say it too much.
Well, if it's in print after you've proofread, there probably is a bigger problem there, but...
maybe.
Yeah,
I used to have a schoolmaster who was on a constant war against nice. He wouldn't let us say nice. Nothing was nice. Be explicit. Is it pleasant? Is it agreeable? What is it? Don't say nice. That's funny. Actually, that is an old family story. My sister was writing her college... Sorry if they're listening. Maybe I'm not supposed to say it, but I'm going to anyway. My sister was writing her college essays and I think had a tendency to use good and nice. And my dad sort of wrote a fake essay for her about Annie Sullivan, like how she was a good teacher who was really nice to, and she said, and someday I hope to be a teacher, which she did become, and I will go to the University of Pennsylvania to learn how to be a good teacher. That would be nice. That was the close. It was a big joke he did. So do you mind if we talk about something other than multiculturalism and the talk non-black version? Because I'd really like to get some of your expertise on China. Oh, please. You mentioned you had been in the news recently for it. Maybe I didn't Google that well, but I didn't see any recent news articles on it. I know you lived there for a while. Your wife is of Chinese descent, and you've written a lot about it. What is it that we should know about China lately? Because they own our country. We really should be hearing about them more. Well, there's been a couple of things recently. One has been the defenestration of this Bo Xilai, who was the boss of Chongqing, huge metropolitan region in
right.
west central China. And the other has been this dissident, Chen Guangcheng, who's taken refuge in the American embassy. So, and created a bit of a conundrum for us, I think, because probably the State Department is having furious meetings trying to figure out what to do about him. So there are a couple of little things coming to a head here, and we're going to have to think about China much more in the future.
Well, take us through these two recent issues, starting with the defenestration, which is a much better word to use than stuff, by the way.
Yeah. Well, the lead player here is a fellow called Bo Xilai, who is what in China is called a princeling, which is a son, in his case, of one of the founders of modern China, one of the old line communists, one of Mao Zedong's comrades, a fellow called Bo Yibo. Pretty unsavory character in my opinion. But Bo Xilai is his son, and he ended up in charge of this vast region in west central China, centered on the city of Chongqing. But it's a huge, sprawling area. I've drive through it for miles and miles. And he was a controversial character. He had some tendencies of promoting old line Maoism. He tried to get people singing the old Maoist revolutionary songs, the East is Red and all this good stuff, which has a certain appeal. There's a lot of resentment in China about the great disparities in wealth. Huge fortunes have been made in China, often by trampling on the rights of little people. Most typically, the typical abuse is property developers in cahoots with local politicians, just taking land from peasants with minimal compensation or sometimes no compensation for their property development projects. That's a very common thing and very common in Chongqing, although not so much recently, but in the 80s and 90s.
Uh-huh.
So there's a lot of resentment about this wealth, and some of that resentment turns itself back towards Maoism, towards this old Maoist dream of everybody equal and no rich people, and everybody struggling together, to build a new China. The old Maoist dream of socialist reconstruction. So he tapped into that vein, but rather hypocritically, because he was himself, of course, getting immensely rich.
Well, that's true of everyone in government in China for the most part.
Yes, and Adam acquiring great masses of stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Well, their mothers won't be happy.
Yeah, and his wife, who was a power in her own right, and controlled this vast business empire. Was even more of a paradox, given that he was promoting this rather leftist line. And their son went to Harrow, which is a very prestigious English boys' boarding school. It was the school that Winston Churchill went to.
Mm-hmm.
And all this seems to have been one of their enablers. Seems to have been this mysterious English businessman called Hayward, who died under very odd circumstances in a hotel room in Chongqing last November. And the story we're now hearing is that Mrs. Bo Xilai's wife, actually poisoned him because he knew too much about them, because he had failed to come through on a deal to launder some money for them. We're hearing different stories. But she's being fingered for the murder of this English middleman,
mm-hmm.
who seems to have helped them a lot, and who surely helped them to get the lad into Harrow. You need some pretty good English connections.
Sure.
So that's one thing, and it's interesting in itself, but it's also interesting in that it shines a light on dark places. It shines a light on this very strange structure in China where you have these powerful political bosses allied, or in this case married, with big plutocrats
mm-hmm.
controlling business empires, who at the same time, on both sides, are hooked in to crime syndicates and who don't hesitate to resort to criminal methods themselves.
Well, what's the key takeaway for, say, a member of my audience who may be conservative-leaning but doesn't think about China all that much, doesn't read news stories on it? Is it, oh, great, another problem we have to worry about, that China is a little bit corrupt? What is the key takeaway here, and how should people even on a more regular basis learn about China, because it's going to be very relevant?
Well, the key takeaway here is not so much something you should lose sleep over right now,
mm-hmm.
as data you should put in to your model of who's going to own the 21st century. Ron Unz, there's a magazine called The American Conservative,
right?
And I have the May issue on my desk here, May issue of American Conservative. And Ron Unz has a very good article, a good long article, China's Rise, America's Fall, about how China will own the 21st century.
You know what? I just thought of something. I have a good friend who lives over there. He's American, white American, and he's from an old family with a lot of money, and he lives near Macau. And just getting the pictures and the stories from him and his wife over there, I mean, they have a lot of money. Just the event, the casino building over there, it's remarkable how much building is going on in a way that is not over here.
Yeah, there was I hate to recommend a left-wing magazine, but there was a very good article on Macau itself in the New Yorker 2 or 3 weeks ago. Good long article, very well researched.
It blows away Las Vegas at this point, doesn't it?
Oh yeah. But again, for the long term, who's going to own the 21st century? Is it the United States or China?
It's the Jews.
What?
Sorry, I'm one of the chosen people. I've been reading too much Torah lately. Sorry.
Well, no, you will control the media. Don't worry about that. But there are pros and cons on both sides. On the one hand, China has advantages. There's no doubt about that. It's starting from a low base. Its people expect much less from their government than ours do. They don't have anything like the welfare infrastructure that we do, or anything like these crippling problems with Social Security and Medicare that we're fretting about, and that might destroy our fiscal position. So they have that as a positive. They're also mono-ethnic. It's also a country. There's nobody in China except Chinese people.
Well, wait, didn't you write in your speech last year that the Han Chinese are only about 60-70% of the population there? I mean, they're in the main parts.
No.
Oh,
it wasn't me. No, the Han Chinese. I haven't looked recently, but it's not far from 95%.
Oh, it is 95% here.
And the non-Han are in the outer regions of the empire. Yeah, one of my little hobby horses is that China would move ahead much faster and be much more of a challenger for the 21st century if they dumped these imperial possessions, if they dumped Tibet and eastern Turkestan, and just concentrated on metropolitan China, which is just full of Chinese people, because then the percentage would be like 99.9% Chinese. So it would be mono-ethnic, and they have no ethnic stresses and strains like we have, and which actually are a big friction for American progress. We're constantly fretting about ethnic issues and school achievement gaps and all this kind of stuff, which they don't have to worry about. So China has a lot of positives, but China has a lot of negatives too, and the negatives are mostly rather hidden. They're not easy to see, and that's why things like this Bo-Xilai incident are very important, because they, as I said, they shine a light in dark places.
Well, John. Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
I was going to say we have our next guest almost ready, and this is a topic that we could spend hours on, and it's something that if the show expands, it's been on an interim basis the last 2 months, or even continues, I want to spend more time on, because I try to focus on the stories that aren't necessarily being covered elsewhere, and this is important. It sounds like you're a wealth of information about China, and
I could talk about China forever. Give me a 1 hour show.
Okay, well, we may come back to you on that.
All right.
Well, and continued speedy recovery with your cancer treatment, obviously.
Oh, thank you very much, Adam.
And thanks for coming on today.
Oh, my pleasure.